All right, today we are diving deep into Neville Goddard's 1954 classic, Awakened Imagination. And let me tell you, this book is built on one single, absolutely radical idea. It's all about the true power of the human mind, a kind of power that, honestly, most of us don't even know we have.
So let's start with this question right here. What if your imagination wasn't just some daydream factory for escaping reality? What if it was actually the tool you use to create it? I mean, that's the central argument Neville Goddard makes. He says that the very thing we often write off as just fantasy is actually the most powerful creative force in the entire universe. It's a huge claim, I know. So let's dig in and see exactly how he backs it up.
Okay, so where does Goddard even begin with this massive idea? Well, he starts by tackling a word we all think we know, a word we use constantly. He says the real problem, the reason we miss its power, is that we're completely confused about what imagination actually means. And you can see this confusion playing out all the time, right? Just think about it. On one hand, we praise someone, we say, wow, they're a real person of imagination. And we mean it as a huge compliment, like it's this amazing creative power. But then on the other hand, someone has an idea we don't like, and we just dismiss it, saying, oh, that's just pure imagination, as if it's totally fake and worthless. Goddard's point is that this exact contradiction is the mental trap that keeps us from understanding what we're really dealing with. And it wasn't just mystics talking like this. You've got guys like Albert Einstein saying stuff like, imagination is more important than knowledge. I mean, Einstein, he knew there was something deeper going on here, something that goes way beyond just logic and facts. It's a huge clue that we're heading in the right direction, toward a much more powerful definition. So how does Neville Goddard cut through all this confusion? Well, he doesn't just tweak the definition a little bit. No, he completely blows it up and redefines it from the ground up. For him, imagination isn't just some little mental tool we have. It's the divine creative force, and it's living inside every single one of us. And this right here is the absolute core of his teaching. Goddard says that your very own human imagination is the Christ that the scriptures talk about. Think about that for a second. He's not talking about some historical figure or an external savior. He's talking about the creative power that's already inside you, the power that brings everything into being. That's the real gateway to a new reality. Yeah, his whole philosophy is built on this radical psychological take. He would say the Bible isn't a history book at all. It's more like a psychological drama, a user's manual for awakening this unbelievable power that's dormant inside of you. So when you read Christ in you, for Goddard, that just means your own imagination, waiting for you to wake it up and tell it what to do. Okay, so that's the what. That's the big, mind-bending theory. But that naturally leads to the next question, right? The how. If our imagination is really that powerful, how in the world do we actually use it? Well, Goddard's main technique is surprisingly simple, and he calls it thinking from the end. And this distinction is absolutely crucial. See, most of us spend our whole lives thinking of the things we want. It's like we're looking at them through a window. They're over there, somewhere in the future, separate from us. Goddard says, nope, that's not how it works. You have to start thinking from the end. You have to mentally step through the window and live in the reality where your desire is already a done deal. It's not about wanting something, it's about mentally becoming the person who already has it. So, here's how you actually do it, step by step. First, you have to know exactly what you want. No vague wishes. Get super clear on your aim. Step 2, you build a tiny little scene, a short mental movie that implies you already have what you want. It shouldn't be the moment you get it, but a moment after, like a friend shaking your hand and congratulating you. And then step 3 is the magic part. As you're lying in bed, about to fall asleep, you play that scene over and over in your mind. You feel it with all your senses. You see it, you hear it, you feel it, until it feels completely real, and you drift off to sleep inside that scene. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. Does this stuff actually work? It sounds a little out there, right? Well, Goddard shares this incredible story from his own life to back it up. So picture this. It's 1933, the middle of the Great Depression. Neville is in New York City. He's totally broke, but he has this one burning desire, to spend the holidays with his family back home in Barbados. So he goes to his teacher, a man named Abdullah, and explains his problem. And Abdullah doesn't give him money, he doesn't give him job needs. He gives him this very strange instruction. He basically says, you are going to Barbados, and tonight, when you go to sleep, you will not fall asleep in New York. You will fall asleep in your mind in your father's house in Barbados. And Neville, to his credit, did exactly that. Every single night,
He'd lie down in his bed in New York, but he would completely ignore his physical reality. In his imagination, he was thousands of miles away. He felt the bed in his family's home, he saw the room, he smelled the Caribbean air. He lived the reality of being home. So what happened? Did it work? You bet it did. Less than a month goes by, and this totally out-of-the-blue letter shows up. It's from his brother, who writes that he was suddenly hit with this overwhelming feeling that the whole family just had to be together for Christmas. And inside the letter, a steamship ticket to Barbados and some spending money. The inner imaginal act had perfectly manifested in the outer world. All right, so if that technique is about creating the future, Goddard's next one is just as wild, because it's all about changing the past. He called it revision. And he used this great analogy. He said it's like using pruning shears on the garden of your mind to trim away the bad stuff and cultivate a better tomorrow. Here's the basic idea. At the end of every day, before you go to sleep, you mentally replay the events of the day. And if you come across any moment that didn't go the way you wanted, maybe you had an argument or you missed an opportunity, you don't just stew on it. You stop and you rewrite that scene in your imagination. You replay it exactly as you wished it had happened. Goddard claimed that doing this actually repeals the original event and all its negative fallout. Let me give you another one of his stories to show you what this looks like in practice. He talks about an artist friend of his who dropped a heavy chair on her foot. I mean, it was bad, swollen, bruised, she couldn't even walk. So she tried to imagine her foot being healed, but she said it just wasn't working. Instead, she got this strange inner nudge, this feeling that she had to review the day's events first. Something else was wrong. So she's reviewing her day, and she remembers this brief, kind of negative conversation she'd had with someone earlier. It had nothing to do with her foot, but it was bothering her. So she decided to revise that. In her mind, she replayed the conversation, but this time she made it friendly and pleasant. She looped this new, happy version a few times and fell asleep. And the next morning, she woke up and her foot was perfectly normal. No pain, no swelling, nothing. By fixing an inner emotional problem, she's somehow fixed her outer physical reality. So you hear stories like that, and you have to ask, what is going on here? How is any of this even possible? What's the deep down logic that makes these techniques work? Well, the answer gets into what might be Goddard's most profound and maybe his most challenging idea. The concept that creation is finished. What he means is this. We aren't creating our reality out of thin air. He says that everything that could possibly happen, every single potential reality, already exists. It's all done. The best way to think about it is like a giant mansion with an infinite number of rooms. Each room is a different reality. Your life right now is just one of those rooms. And your imagination, well, your imagination is the key that lets you walk out of your current room and into any other room you choose. And you know, the poet William Blake, who was a massive influence on Neville, put this beautifully. He said that this outer world we see, the one that feels so real and solid, it's just a shadow. It's nothing more than a reflection of the true reality, the eternal world that exists inside your own amazing imagination. So how do we choose which room we're in? How do we move from one state of being to another? Goddard says we do it all day long, primarily with our inner speech. You know those conversations you're constantly having with yourself in your head, the ones you think don't matter? Well, he says they matter more than anything. They are the seeds, and they are always growing and objectifying themselves as the actual conditions and events of your life. And really, that brings us right to the heart of it all. It's the big takeaway. If it's true, if our inner world is really creating our outer world, then literally everything comes down to those private conversations we have with ourselves. So the most important question you can ever ask yourself is the one right here. What are you telling yourself right now?